And yeah, welcome. Thank you for your time today.
All right, thanks, Kate, and thanks everyone for joining us either live today or watching back this recording. It's an honour to join you. I'm coming to you from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respect to elders past and present and want to acknowledge our First Nations people's ongoing connection to land, water, community and language. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you a little bit today about our journey in New South Wales for what we call our spatial digital twin. The program's called Live in New South Wales. I always say this, the digital twin's the shiny toy that we get to talk about, but it's really about how do we unlock the value of geospatial data. Given that we have an international audience, I'm not going to assume that everybody knows who Spatial Services is. But in essence, we're the spatial leader for New South Wales Government. We are responsible for providing the foundation spatial data, not just to government, but to also individuals, businesses and government agencies. In New South Wales, we operate under an open data policy with a default of making data open and free where available and where possible, unless there's security concerns about the individual data. We have a range of products and services that people will utilise, and so some of the things that we are responsible for is from a surveying perspective. One of my roles is being Surveyor General, is providing the survey control network, so we do that through passive and active. We have a cause network that covers 99.4% of New South Wales, and we've managed to keep that at 100% availability for the last 2 years, knock on wood. And I say that because we had a recent mobile phone outage for Optus in Australia, where anybody who was on that network lost ability to access the network. We'd actually designed our network with redundancy so that if one of our network providers goes down, we've got alternative ways so that all of our customers that are relying on that information across infrastructure, mining, surveying projects across New South Wales, they could continue to operate during that time. Part of our key work is around providing the cadastral boundaries property data, and so we do that with a regulatory focus, and we work with the Office of the Registrar General, and our titling in New South Wales is under a private concession, and so New South Wales Land Registry Services, the three of us work closely together to make sure that's kept up to date and the integrity of that service is maintained. And we also have a key role in supporting emergency services, so ensuring that we are prepared and can respond and recover to emergency situations. Our role is to provide the spatial data that all of those people need. So we get to sit behind computers and provide data, while those firefighters and flood rescue and other emergency responders are heading towards the hazard. So we make sure that they're given the best information available to make the right decisions. We operate 2 aeroplanes that capture imagery and LiDAR as well. So we're very privileged to have that as an in-house capability. And that's, again, critically important when we're thinking about the number of disaster responses that New South Wales has had to respond to over the past 4 years. We also work really closely with private industry partners through a procurement panel because we can't, even though we are lucky to have 2 aircraft, we can't capture all of the areas at the same time, and so work closely with both satellite and aircraft providers to provide us with the imagery that we need in those situations. The Live New South Wales program, our Spatial Digital Twin, is our flagship transformation program, and so I'll talk a little bit of, well, I'll talk about that in detail in a moment. A little bit about our structure. For those of you who don't know who we are, we sit in what's known as the New South Wales Department of Customer Service in an area of the government called Digital New South Wales. So my colleagues that I work closely with look at things like cybersecurity, government technology platforms, digital identity, and the New South Wales Telco Authority, which is all about making sure that emergency services have the right communications in those situations. Within our team, we have, the executive support and our executive office and project management, but we have our survey operations or the Office of the Surveyor General teams, which look at the statutory functions of the Surveyor General and include things like the Geographical Names Board and the registration of surveyors. We have our spatial operations team, customer and emergency management, our information services, which is our ICT, but also we have a commercial print facility and design facility, and then our Live New South Wales program. So our digital twin, our Live New South Wales program, we received $40 million of funding from the program that's known as the Digital Restart Fund to transform our foundation spatial data systems and processes. So again, spatial digital twin is our shiny toy, but what we're actually talking about is the fundamental transformation of the way spatial services provides data. We've moved from topographic hard copy maps, and when I started, we were still printing and selling those, into providing this data digitally, and now and very much been a data warehouse. Here's our data, take it or leave it. And so we've been on a transformation process of engaging with our customers, our stakeholders, our clients, depending on which term you like to use, to make sure that the data we're providing meets their needs, making sure we understand the needs of government agencies, of the public, so that we can design products, data and services to meet those needs. We've managed, as part of that program, we're also doing a statewide gravity model to improve the height datum, as well as a number of other benefits that I'll touch on shortly, and really about creating those visualization and customer engagement capabilities. It's great to have this data. It's an excellent asset. We're working on having it realized as a state digital asset that has just as much importance as the physical assets that we have. But it can be very overwhelming for non-geospatial people to come into our platforms and see 1,000 data sets. And they're like, which data sets do I need? What is the difference between a WMS or a WFS? Does it matter which datum? So making sure that we can create a series of different user experiences so that the technical experts can get the data they need, but that doesn't preclude the everyday citizen, the everyday member of the community being able to access their data and use it as well. So as part of that, we're developing a range of products. And so we have our digital twin visualization service, and I'll show some examples of that at the moment, but it's really about creating a spatial digital twin explorer, a way for people to come in and explore that 3D, 4D information without having special expertise, but also then as an advanced user, being able to use the tool sets that are in there to do analysis, modeling, to build story maps, or stories to share with the people that your clients bring and merge your data in it with well. In terms of SDT stories, one of the problems we've seen is that government, when they do consultation, there's lots of room for improvement. And so, you know, as an example, with state significant developments for us, like a medical centre, you know, often when we engage with the community, it's go onto a website and download 40 different PDF documents, and, you know, the lay user is not going to be able to interpret all of those documents, and it's very overwhelming. So how do we craft a story that we want to share with them that brings out the key things and links them to the different parts of the document so they can understand where to go? It improves engagement. Also, importantly, it breaks through barriers around language. So something like 45% of people who live in New South Wales speak a language other than English. And so how do we break through those language barriers that you would usually see in technical reports with the visualization capabilities? And our collaboration portal is really at the heart of what we do, and it's how we share data and how we make that data available to people in a whole range of different platforms, with the idea of capture once and use many times. So building on that, our data portal supports open, secure and restricted data. So, you know, as I said, as a foundation in New South Wales under our open data policy, our data is available freely and openly to everybody. But there are pieces of data that you don't want to make available. Maybe it's about the critical infrastructure that we need to protect. So we want to be able to protect that from a terrorism threat. Or maybe it's about a proposed infrastructure that hasn't got a cabinet decision for us. So, you know, there might be 3 or 4 options that are being under consideration at the moment, but we want to make sure that the Transport Authority, water, schools, health, all of the infrastructure organisations that are going to be impacted by that can share that information securely in a digital format. We can control who has access to that information. So the custodian of the data set can control through the portal who has access to it. It also helps when people leave, that making sure that they no longer have access to information that you don't want people outside of government agencies having access to. Importantly for us, it's all about collaboration and federation of geospatial data. It's not about making spatial services the one place to rule all spatial data. It's about how do we work with our government agencies, partners and stakeholders at all different levels. So in Australia, we've got local government, state government, federal government. How do we make sure that we can collaborate in that capture once, use many times? If somebody else is capturing data, why would I capture it? Let's utilize it and work together and create those seamless layers. And that's where we say our collaboration portal sits at the heart of that. So not only do we have our data in this diagram that sits at the bottom that feeds into that, we can also take in data from external agencies at all of those different levels. And also for smaller agencies who don't have the capability to publish their own data via APIs, we can host that data on their behalf and publish it through as well. And then the idea being that it can be consumed in a variety of different platforms that suit the needs, or if you've got specialist software, you can consume that information directly into your software. In Australia, we're on a modernisation process. So many of you will have heard of the Foundation Spatial Data Framework. In Australia, we had 10 themes. UNGGIM have adopted that framework, but added some additional 4. And so we're in a process of adding buildings and settlements, physical infrastructure, geology, soils, and population information into our Foundation Spatial Data, working, for example, from a populations perspective with the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Again, making sure that we're collaborating across government to get the best value out of our individual governments' investments. And so, you know, you'll hear today from a number of different programs that are happening, but what we've done with each jurisdiction that's working on this, we're all conscious that we're on our own individual journeys, but very much collaborating where possible and making strategic decisions around, well, as New South Wales, we're going to focus on this piece. And as an example, Victoria, they're going to focus on a different piece, but using open access to information and software, we're then able to share the learnings and incorporate those in our own systems. So therefore, increasing the capabilities and investment and value that we each get from the programs that we're running. I'm a surveyor, so I'm always going to start with the survey aspect. And so I say that the foundation of the Foundation Spatial Data is our survey control and network, and making sure that we've got the right spine and the right backbone to build all of that spatial data on top of. And so we've been going through a journey of increasing the accuracy of both our height dimension, but also improving the information that we provide to people in terms of eastings and northings, so the XY. So from a height perspective, I'll touch on that first. We've recently, at the end of November, finished our capture for, and we've captured all of New South Wales and 50 kilometres offshore. I'm going to jump to the next one because that gives you an idea of where our coverage is. For those people who are overseas, to give some context, New South Wales is a little bit bigger than Texas. So just the scale of what we've been able to capture in that. This is the preliminary data that's already being available. We're in the process of going through the QA and working with Geoscience Australia and also New South Wales Geological Survey in how we prepare the products that from this gravity model. So it has significant benefits from a surveying perspective in improving the accuracy of the geoid, which for the survey and GPS nerds will know that that's really important for the accuracy of height and the connection between the ellipsoid and actual height for us, and so making that as accurate as possible. And austerity measures, lights, turning off because I'm not moving around, and utilising that information to improve our height datum. So our height datum in New South Wales, well, in Australia, is over 50 years old, and so we are seeing issues where we know there are inaccuracies in our current height datum. So we want to improve that, because at the moment we are downgrading data sets like LiDAR to fit to our height datum, because that's what we're legally required to do. But we know that means we're actually introducing errors into that data. So some of the benefits, I've touched on surveying, but there's a range of other benefits that come that are actually more important, I'd say, than the surveying ones, or I shouldn't say more important, have more of an economic impact. And it's things like being able to identify the major natural hazards, the geological hazards that we weren't aware of, being able to help identify underground water storage. It helps with exploration of resources. And it's really important for New South Wales as we move into a drought, particularly their groundwater. I know it sounds, for anyone who's in New South Wales at the moment, where we've had quite a lot of rain recently, but the indication is that we're moving into drought. And so being able to look at how we can identify new groundwater storage for our farmers out west is going to be really important moving forward. As I touched on, our Australian height datum, at the moment, AHD 71, but what we've, in working with Geoscience Australia, we have also an Australian vertical working surface. So we haven't moved to that as our datum, but exploring the opportunity for how that can fill the gap in the meantime, and how that might in the future replace our current height datum. But it's not just about height, it's also about the X and the Y. And so all survey plans in New South Wales have to connect, all registered survey plans, I should say, when people are creating property titles, have to connect into our state survey control network. And so there's a wealth of information in there. We're in the process of having back captured all of the current plans, and moving towards surveyors submitting digital information in the future. We want to make sure that we can utilise the wealth of information that sits in those plans. And so what we've done is skimmed through those land XML files to capture data that's related to survey control. And so we ran a pilot last year in 11 regions. And as a result of being looking at those almost 7,100 deposited plans, we were able to extract, and sorry, the comma's wrong in that slide. I don't know how I missed that before, but we extracted just under 34,000 measurements that were extracted and analysed and put into our network, and allowed us to upgrade the accuracy of the coordinates provided for just under 4,200 marks. What that does mean for us is that in the future, when surveyors are providing digital information, that we'll be able to quickly update information when people put new marks in the ground. Sometimes at the moment, there can be significant delays in that happening through manual processes. And so looking at how we can automate those processes as much as possible with a human QA check at the end before they get published, but making sure that infrastructure is then available to use for the next person. In terms of our land, parcel and property theme, it's really been a focus on how do we shift from the traditional maps that you see here. This is from our 6 Maps platform, which you can only see in a 2D format, and you can only see what's current now. The problem with that is that just over 50% of new titles being created are strata. That's our 3D apartments. And so those people buying those can't actually see their land entitlement in our mapping system at the moment. And so 2 things that we've implemented is a 4D component, a time component for our cadastre. And so this is what you can do when you look at this platform is you can see the current cadastre, but you can also pick any time in history since 2001. And we've been tracking how the cadastre has changed over that time. And being able to then represent that, which is great when we're looking at how growth areas have happened, or in terms of response to natural disasters, planning decisions that have been made. And then I touched on before our strata titles. So now people can now see in 3D their environment for where their unit will be. But when we talk about time, it's not just about what's there now, but also what's proposed. And so we've been working really closely with our Department of Planning to create a pipeline of proposed cadastre. So where are the developments that have been development approved? Where are they in that cycle between a DA being approved through to construction certificates, through to subdivision certificates, and then becoming registered? Because anyone who's seen any news for New South Wales will see that New South Wales, like many parts of Australia, has a housing crisis. And so the government has a strong focus on how do we unlock the pipeline? How do we remove barriers? And this data working with the planning department helps us to identify why properties might be taking longer to come to market than we were expecting. And again, not just thinking about land subdivisions, but proposed cadastre. We've also done work in terms of photo reality meshes so that it's not just those blocks. And we've also worked with third-party property tech companies like Archistar and Giraffe so that there's integration for proposed development. So if you're going to build an apartment building, what would it look like? What will different options look like? We have live data sharing. And so this is a little bit gimmicky, I suppose, but and I'm not doing a live demo, but every 4 seconds, those little buses would move, the trains would move. What it's demonstrating, though, is that we can take those IoT sensors and the data and bring them in. So if, in a live demo, you will actually see little blue buses driving down the street. But it's not just about the transport, it is also a whole range of other IoT sensors. And so I talked before about working with all levels of government. Here's examples of the federal government publishing data sets via APIs around power generation. And so we can see the power that's being generated from a different variety of stations. And then down the bottom, the graph is showing you how much energy is being generated by a wind farm and 2 solar farms. And so you can download that information. I've used those because they're at least comparable, because when you bring on a coal-powered station, it's significantly higher, but it helps us to track and understand what's happening. And we also work with local government. And so here's an example of people counters that councils can then use. So we have a program in New South Wales that's all around smart cities and smart places. But a lot of the times councils can get the investment for the tech, but don't always have the investment for the software platforms to be able to take advantage of that tech. And so this provides them with a capability, as long as when they set up to publish via APIs, they can now utilize the information that we're in our platform. The use cases and benefits, over the 4 years that we've kind of been on this digital twin journey are pretty significant, and every day somebody suggests a new use case. We've got a really strong infrastructure delivery program in New South Wales government at the moment, and so we've been working with schools infrastructure really closely to help them improve their the time it takes from, hey, we need to build a school, to actually building the school. And then also now we're starting to work with them on the process of, well, how do you manage that asset as a digital asset as well as the physical asset? So they manage over 2,200 schools. In 2020, they had to develop 80 business cases. And that was kind of our benchmark for how long, in comparison, it took them to do it back then, to like over the last 2 years, how long it takes for them. We estimated at the beginning of the program that it would lead to a 45% reduction in time to deliver. It also reduces the government's reliance on consultants and contractors, in that there's a lot of the capability that can be built in-house, a lot of the capability that can be automated. And so we estimated over 10 years, we'd save about $200 million. We've been working with them closely for the last 2 years. And at the moment, it looks like we're going through the final process, but it looks like cost avoidance of $90 million just in 2 years. So we severely underestimated the benefit that it would provide to them. As a little subset of that snapshot, there was a government announcement around an approach to putting a preschool, so pre-primary school capability in each public school in New South Wales. They had to do a whole bunch of due diligence to determine which schools could or couldn't be implemented in, or what the roadblocks were. By working with the data sets that we provide openly, they were able to assess 473 sites in just 4 weeks, which, just for that pilot was a $4.4 million saving, and a saving in time of about 6 months from procurement processes. So if we can do these sort of benefits for schools infrastructure, and just in that initiation and design, there are opportunities for further benefits realisation across procurement, construction and maintenance, and not just through education, but also through health, transport and our other areas of infrastructure. And if we can deliver just a 1% savings efficiency across the infrastructure portfolio, that's a $1 billion saving for the New South Wales government. And I know there's a few questions in there and I've only got 5 minutes to go, so I might stop there.
Thanks, Narelle. I might ask Tori just to take yourself off and pose your question to Narelle. Thank you very much, Narelle.
Hi, is my microphone working? So often it doesn't. Okay,
yep,
cool.
perfect. We can hear you.
Thank you. I'm so excited for this conference and I'm so happy to hear from everyone. Big spatial digital twin fan here. Yeah, I'm just wondering about whether you see AI and machine learning being integrated with the digital twin for future predictive analytics for like emergency situations. I'd love to know if that's already happening, if it's in the plans for the future, if you foresee it being there. Yeah. Thank you.
Tori, maybe I should have gone to my next slide. So in spatial services, we've been exploring how we can use AI and machine learning for a range of different aspects. One example that we are actively using it in is in terms of flood extent mapping. So working with the State Emergency Services response, how do we identify what the extents of the flood mapping is? And so working with Deloitte and Charles Sturt University, we collaborated on a student project for their honours students, their thesis students, to look at how we could utilise AI and machine learning to extract that data. The pilot went really well, and so now we're working to productionise that, and we're not just testing it on our data now, we're also looking at how we can use that on commercially purchased data for us, and also satellite imagery as well, to see the extents, because we didn't have the manpower between us to be able to map the flood extents previously. I also know Victoria has been using AI and ML for buildings data sets. And so, we're working really closely with them for how we can adopt their learnings, and they're working with us for how they can adopt ours. So hopefully that answers what you're after.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. That's why they have those really cool roofs.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Tori. Thanks, Narelle. I think we've got time for one more question. I'll hand over to Jeanette.
Yes, hi. Good morning. I'm wondering, this is very, very impressive. I wish Canada is doing the same. But in making the data available publicly, even though I know that some of it is still confidential, how do you manage any risks or any danger of the data falling into or being explored by bad actors like terrorists or criminals and so on?
Yeah, so our cybersecurity posture is pretty critical for us. We are really conscious that there are a significant number of agencies that rely on our data, and so we are very conscious about somebody, a bad actor, taking our website down and taking our data down. So we have a whole range of cybersecurity measures in place as in part of the Department of Customer Service, and so we sit within that. One of my colleagues happens to be the lead for cybersecurity policy in New South Wales, so we lean heavily on their expertise, and they have a vulnerability management centre that monitors threats. We do regular pen testing, and we actually pay people to try and hack our systems so that we can identify vulnerabilities and patch them and ensure. So I think in terms of the data sets that we consider critical from a infrastructure or a terrorism threat, they're not accessible to the members of the public. And so we use user credentials. We have a process where we regularly check who has access to that data, and we verify that they're still meant to have access to that data. So nobody is ever exempt from, we can't say that the risk is 100% managed, because you know, the hackers are a lot better than we are, and we're always following behind them, but we do everything we can to make sure we've got the right environment. We also have managed services that monitor our environment for any odd activity, and that flags with us so that we can isolate. The other part is that the way our architecture is set up is it's such that we can shut down different parts of the system without taking the whole system down. And we also have disaster recovery in place so that if one part of our environment got compromised, we could quickly shut it down and then launch into the backup environment. I know that I've got maybe a minute, Kate. There are a couple of other questions in terms of things. That's all right. In terms of 3D or 2.5D, it's a mixture depending on the information that's been provided to us. And so we make sure all of our data sets have strong metadata that talk about how the data's been developed, because there are some data sets that are with assumed heights, and so it's just a 2D extruded, so the 2.5D, but then other data sets have been augmented with LiDAR and AI and ML to do analytics to determine heights of buildings and stuff like that. So there's a combination, and it's really about us making sure that we're publishing the metadata with our data that makes it very clear as to how that data has been derived.